Long before the kingdoms learned to carve their histories into stone, there stood a city of bronze gates and white towers, ruled by a king whose name has been lost, but whose mistake was not. To the east of the city rose a mountain, dark and patient. Beneath it, the elders said, slept a dragon. Not a young dragon, loud and reckless, an ancient one. So old that moss had grown over the cave mouth, so still that birds nested on the rocks above its skull. For 100 years no smoke had risen from the mountain, no village had burned, no scream had carried on the wind. Yet the king feared it. At night, while the city slept, he lay awake listening to silence, imagining it breaking. He saw fire in his dreams. He saw walls collapsing, children running, banners turning to ash. What kind of king waits for destruction? He asked his council. What kind of ruler ignores a danger simply because it is quiet? And so he prepared. He ordered the forges to burn day and night. Swords were made in numbers the kingdom had never needed. Spears lined the streets like forests of iron. Young men were pulled from fields and trained for war that had not been declared. The farmers complained. The harvest will fail, they said. There is no enemy, they said. The king answered with certainty. Would you rather starve for a season, he replied, or burn forever? So the fields were left untended, grain grew scarce, bread became thin. Still, the dragon slept. Walls were raised higher, thicker. Homes near the eastern gate were torn down to make room for defenses. Families were displaced. Markets shrank. Trade slowed. Merchants whispered. Fear has become policy, they said. We are bleeding without being cut. The king heard them and hardened his heart. Fear, he said, is the price of survival. Still, the dragon slept. The king began to mistrust silence itself. Why had the dragon not moved? Why had it not attacked? What kind of creature waits this long? Spies were sent into the mountain paths. None returned, not because they were killed, but because they found nothing. Empty tunnels, old bones, stone worn smooth by time. Their reports only deepened the king's terror. A patient enemy is the most dangerous of all, he declared. And so he ordered something unforgivable. The eastern forests were burned, not by dragon fire, but by his own command, so the dragon would have nowhere to hide if it rose. The sky darkened with smoke, the rivers filled with ash. The land cried out, but the king called it protection. Still, the dragon slept. One evening, an old warrior came before the throne. He had fought real wars against real enemies. His armor was scarred. His voice was calm. "My king," he said, "I have faced dragons." The court fell silent. They do not sleep through danger. They wake when they are threatened. The king leaned forward. "What are you saying?" The warrior met his gaze. "That perhaps the dragon is not our enemy. That perhaps it sleeps because it has no reason to wake." The king arose in anger. "Then you would have me do nothing?" he roared. "You would have me gamble my kingdom on hope?" The warrior bowed his head. "No," he said softly, "I would have you gamble it on wisdom." The king dismissed him before dawn. At last, the king could bear the waiting no longer. He gathered his armies larger than the city could feed, and marched east toward the mountain. The roads cracked under their weight. The banners were heavy. The soldiers were tired before the battle even began. When they reached the mountain, they found the cave. It was smaller than the king had imagined. No fire, no roar, no movement. Only stone, and silence. The king commanded the soldiers to strike. They hurled spears into darkness, they lit fires, they shouted challenges meant for monsters. Nothing answered. At last, the king himself approached the cave. Inside, beneath layers of stone and time, lay the dragon, not coiled for attack, not watching, sleeping. Its scales were dull, cracked with age. Its wings were folded like forgotten banners. Its breath was slow, deep, like the mountain itself breathing. And in that moment, the king realized the truth. The dragon was not a destroyer. It was a keeper, an ancient guardian bound to the land, whose fire once renewed the soil, whose presence kept balance. As long as the kingdom lived in harmony with the mountain, the dragon slept. But the forests burned, the rivers choked, the land was wounded, and now the dragon stirred. Not from hunger, not from rage, from pain. The mountain trembled, the soldiers ran, the king stood frozen as the dragon opened one vast, weary eye. It did not roar, it spoke. "I slept," the dragon said, its voice like stone grinding slowly, "because the world was at peace. I wake because fear has become your law." The king fell to his knees. "I was protecting my people," he whispered. The dragon's eye narrowed. "No," it said, "you were protecting your fear." With one breath, not of fire, but of wind, the dragon shattered the king's banners and scattered the army like leaves. The city was spared. The king was not. The dragon returned to its sleep. The mountain healed slowly. The kingdom, without its king, learned a hard lesson. They rebuilt the forests, they fed the land, they lowered the walls. And no ruler after that ever prepared for a war that had not yet come. Some dangers awaken only when we refuse to stop fearing them. Not every sleeping threat is an enemy, and not every act of protection is wisdom.